Today we're going to solve this problem here, not being able to unfold your drawbridge style steps because you don't have enough clearance. Now, granted, I could push these legs in, that's typically what I do, and then I barely have enough clearance to unfold them fully here, but I left them pushed out just to demonstrate this common problem that a lot of us have as RVers, particularly at a storage site. I mean, I've got the Moride step above version here, and I've measured you have to have 55 inches of clearance from the outside of your RV wall to whatever obstruction in order to fully unfold these steps, and that's with these legs pushed in. I had the Lippert solid steps on my last RV, and those required 50 inches all the way across to unfold. And so it's a common problem that a lot of us as RVers have, and today I'm going to solve this problem. Now, to remove the old step, I'm going to try to do it all in one piece. I've got the version with the strut assist here, and so I've got 4 screws here that are anchoring it to the door frame on this side, and then another 4 screws going down this side. Then I will lift up the steps, and there are 4 more screws holding it down to the bottom of the floor right there. Then going over to the other side. So you can see underneath, then I've got 4 screws, 1, 2 on that side, and then 2 more on that side, and that should be everything holding in this old step. So I got all the screws loose, and then I'm going to loosen up these 2 bolts on either side to slide this kind of cleat over, because I have a feeling it's going to be easier if I do that on both sides to kind of rotate the step outward. Alright, so that wasn't so bad. You can see that everything is removed now. It came out in one piece, and it was a little heavy getting out by myself, but it's totally manageable if you're working solo. And I was actually surprised. I thought something with the assist here with the gas props would want to cause it to kind of tilt over here, but I see it's all connected with one piece with an L down there, so that's why nothing happened there. So you don't have to mess with this at all. You just literally have to take out those 4 screws that are securing it to the door frame, and then the 2 underneath on each side. So then a total of 12 screws total holding on the old steps. Okay, so next I'm going to dry fit the bracket, the mounting plate for the new steps. And so it looks good on either side. I'm nice and flush to the inside of my door frame there. I am noticing, however, I've got a little piece of trim inside here, and I'll show you what that looks like, that Jayco had put here for the old steps because the flange was wider, and so it needed something to mount next to the door frame. And the only problem is this piece of trim, it's like a backer strip of wood, is ever so slightly proud of my door frame. And so, you know, when this gets tightened up, it's really supposed to rest on the door frame. And if I leave that trim there, it's going to be kind of resting on the trim and pushing, I guess, more out on the wall here than the door frame. So I think what I'm going to do, I mean, it probably would be okay because it's just, like I said, 1/8 of an inch. But I think what I'm going to do is notch out the backer strip here. I'm going to leave it in place. You could take it out, but I'm going to leave it in place because I'm going to go over it later. But I'm going to notch it out just, you know, about 1/8 inch at the top, and it looks like about 1/4 inch at the bottom there, so that this mounting plate can go flush up against my door frame there. So I got everything marked, ready to cut. I went ahead and put a center point on the floor and then a center point on the actual bracket, so I can make sure if it shifts a little bit out of place that I get it back into the center. And I'm looking at the center point as an even amount here at the bottom on both sides between the door frame. And you can see where I marked on this side, I mean, it's barely anything. The bracket is tapered, so it's a little bit thicker, wider down here at the bottom compared to at the top, ever so slightly. So you can see where I'm trimming it right there. And then on this side, it's just a tad bit more, starting at the top and going down. That's all I'm taking out, and that way it'll sit flush up against my door frame. All right, so you can see just that little bit. It ended up being more on this side. It's all cleared. And then same story over here. And so that should make the bracket fit a little bit better. Okay, so let's see how it fits now that I've got that little bit trimmed out on either side. And again, I'm using my center mark that I put down here to make sure I'm in the same position. And that is much better. Yeah, that is perfect actually. Let me show you how nice that turned out. So you can see I'm lined up in the center over here, and now you can see that bracket has that little bit of extra clearance that it needed. And then same story on this side, it follows that bracket real nicely. So I'm much happier with that. That way it can get nice and tight up against the door frame there. Next, I'm going to mark my holes. There's basically 3 different bolts that are going to go through here on each side of the bracket. You can see they give you these nice, looks like stainless steel with kind of a Allen hex head there. I'm going to try to get these bolts kind of mounted away from this weather stripping, but I want to leave just a little bit of clearance away from the inside of this door jamb here. So it looks like the door flange itself is about 5/8 of an inch long here, and so I'm going to shoot for about 1/4 inch off the door jamb for where the center of my bolts go. So I got all 6 of my holes drilled. I'm going to do one more dry fit before I do the final mounting. So I'm going to line it up on my center mark on the tape here, and we'll check all of our holes. They look good on this side. They're nice and lined up. And over here, looking good. Yeah, so all the holes are right where I want them. And so then before I do the final mount, I'm going to go ahead and get some silicone and just fill in these old holes from the previous steps. Not really doing any harm here, but I figure might as well seal them up just in case any water would get under here and don't want it going back into the subfloor there. Now I noticed one detail before I put my silicone in the holes. You can see it's kind of mushroomed up on the vinyl flooring around each of the holes, and you know that's going to be under this mounting plate, which is flat. It's supposed to be sitting flat on the floor, so technically these little mushrooms are going to be raising up this mounting bracket. So I'm going to come with my little oscillating tool and just kind of nip off the head of that mushroom before I put the silicone on. At last, I'm going to put the bracket now in the final position here, and they give you all this hardware. The screws here are going to go on the outside of our door flange right here, and then pretend like this is the door flange, and then you've got your regular washers, your lock washers, and your nuts. And they also give you the Allen key for these fancy screws. So you can see a close-up of what it looks like. I've just got them finger tightened here on the outside, and then I'll give you a better look here on the inside. We've got our washer, lock washer, and then our nuts. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these up, and I'm gonna be using a 3/8 inch wrench on the inside, and then of course the Allen key that they provide you for these nice fancy outside screws. Now before I do my final tightening, I'm just going to make sure that the bracket is nice and parallel all the way up against the door flange here. There's just a little bit of flex at the top here, so you can, flex it in or out as you need to. And also, again, make sure that I'm, of course, centered up here on my mark. So it's looking pretty good. I think when I get to the top here, I'm going to push this out ever so slightly, and probably a little bit up here on this one, but otherwise it's looking good all the way across. And here's some close-ups with everything all tight so you can get an idea of what it looks like when everything's mounted. Coming from the inside here. And then also on the left side. So I like that they gave you those fancy screws with the Allen, the hex head, because it does look a little bit neater, kind of like a nice finish trim screw compared to Phillips head, and it just makes it look a little bit more polished and refined there. Alright, so I'm deploying the steps just like I would at a campsite, all the way fully deployed. Gonna get the feet down here where they ought to be. Let's see, probably one more. Yeah, a little bit more. Alright, so let's see. I think there's still just a little bit unlevel. Let's get a little bit more. So now that I got the steps fully extended, they want the stair assembly here. They want this piece right here to be uptight against your threshold of the door. So you can see right now we've got about a 1/4 inch gap. And basically with these two Allen screws loose on both sides, there's a little bit of play. These are kind of at an angle, and so there's a little bit of play for this to shift the whole thing back and forth. So I'm going to shift it back so we get rid of this gap here so it's nice and tight against there on both sides, and then I'm going to tighten up the Allen screws on both sides there. Okay, so I've gotten the Allen screws tightened down on both sides, and you can see I've got a real nice tight fit up against the threshold of the door. And the reason that's so important is because now we're going to test close the door, and this of course goes between the door and where it seals down here and up against the threshold. So if this is sticking out, then the door's not going to close properly. So go ahead and give it a try and see what kind of fit we're looking at here. Oh yeah, very nice. So I don't have any resistance whatsoever. That feels still nice and tight up against the bottom of the stairs there. Then last thing we're going to do is we're going to fold up the stairs, and there's two little studs here on either side on the mounting bracket, and that's what keeps the stairs stable. Basically they sandwich it between the studs and your door, your screen door. So we're going to fold up the stairs and see if we need to adjust these so that it's nice and tight up against the screen door. So you can see with the stairs all folded up here how it locks into place. I noticed there's a little kind of like a nylon bushing here and then a deep groove that it needs to fit into to make sure that the stairs are fully, locked into place. So that's kind of what it looks like. But here's what we need to adjust last to complete, and that is this little stop right here that's going to bump into the screen door. And there's a little stud on the opposite side here that this part of the stair assembly is resting on. And so that stud can travel in and out. And that way this little bumper can go in and out so that it's uptight against your door. And that way it's not, rattling back and forth in transit. So they say in the instructions that this is easiest if you have two people, because obviously one person has to be inside and then someone's got to shut the door. But I'm working solo today, and so I've just got a 3-step ladder over here. So I'm going to hop inside, hop over the steps, shut the door, and then make that adjustment. Okay, so we're up inside the RV now. I'm going to go ahead and get the door shut tight all the way. And then you can see, let me move the light a little bit better so you can see right now there is a gap between that rubber stopper and the screen door. And so that's what we're going to tighten up so that it can't go like this in transit and, wiggle back and forth. So we're going to go ahead and tighten up. We'll first loosen that stud and then get it into position there. And for this I'm using a, looks like a 7/16 socket. Alright, so we're going to push it all the way in. This side, actually let me loosen both sides first. That way we can make sure we get both of them. Alright, both sides are loose, so now I'm going to push it up tight against the screen door and then slide that stud over. Be just a little bit looser. There we go. Alright, so in my case, the way my screen door is, I've got to push that stud almost all the way over to the most inside position there. Okay, so what I found while trying to tighten this up is it's really hard to get this stud tight, at least for me, with the clearances here. And so in my case, since I discovered the stud needs to go almost all the way out, maybe about an 1/8 inch past the most inside position there. So I'm going to go ahead and remember that position on both sides and go ahead and open the door, get the stairs out of the way, and that way I've got more unobstructed access to hold the stud on one side and tighten that bolt up on the other. All right, that's going to make it a lot easier, at least for me, to get in here and get this nice and tight. So let's go ahead and get this side tightened up. Okay, so I've got that stud pushed all the way this way, and I've got the other side as well, nice and tight. So now I'm going to check it one more time just to make sure that we're good. So we'll go ahead and lift up the stairs, and I'm doing this one-handed, and then fold it up here, and very nice. Okay, so we'll go ahead and hop in again and see what it looks like with the door closed. All right, there we go. Okay, so we're looking much tighter. So actually this side, interesting. So I just assumed both sides would be the same, but this side's actually a little too tight. I need to back off. So one mistake I made is assuming that both sides, the stud will be in the same position. It's actually going to be different on that side. So I think by loosening up the other side, that's probably going to make this side go a little bit tighter. So just something that I learned doing it in the process. Okay, so I've got this stud over here pushed inward just a little bit so it's in the right position to keep it nice and tight when the door is closed. But let me show you one other detail that I've noticed now that I've put these stairs in and out 3 or 4 times. And so again, I'm going to do this one-handed and push it tight. And notice how the studs on either side, they're just barely making contact with that one Allen screw on both sides. And so what's going on is when I installed this bracket, I assumed that it needed to be, perpendicular to the ground all the way up, parallel to the door jamb edge. But actually, I think it needs to go kind of tapered outward at the top on both sides, and that way that stud will not be making contact with that screw, because over time that's certainly going to catch and kind of leave some wear marks on that stud. So I'm going to loosen these top 2 screws on both sides here on my mounting bracket, and then kind of stretch the top of the bracket outward on both sides so that I've got maybe just about an 1/8 inch clearance with that stud and the screw. Okay, so now I've got the top of the mounting brackets on both sides kind of pushed outward, and that'll give a little bit more clearance. So we'll go ahead and check it again and see what we're looking like. Oh yeah, much better. So now we've got a good, 1/16 of an inch right there, and probably closer to an 1/8 inch on this side. So that worked out much better. And I will say there is a little bit of play in the whole stair assembly as it folds down, kind of side to side. And so it's better to have a little bit more clearance with that stud poking out there. So basically when you do it, don't make the mistake I made. Basically you want to push out the top of these brackets as far as you can when you tighten up these screws. It's not so much that it's parallel to the door frame, it's that these top are spread out as far as you can. That'll give you some more clearance there on the top. Okay, so that just about completes the install of our steps. There's just a few more details that I'm gonna do in my case. First one is I'm gonna take a bead of silicone and run along here against the floor and the new stair bracket, and that way no water can get up under there, especially since we're gonna be taking these steps and folding them up into the RV. If you're leaving on a day that's rainy, we don't want that rainwater to get trapped under there. And then one other spot that I'm going to run a bead of silicone, if you close up the steps, notice right here we've got our new stair bracket, and it kind of has its own built-in threshold. But then look at the door threshold. I've got about an 1/8 inch gap right here between the 2 pieces. So I'm going to run a bead of silicone there as well so that no water can get trapped up under there. So those are 2 little details I'm going to do with some silicone. And then let me show you some trim details inside. This is going to depend on your unit, but in my case you can see I had the old flange of the MORryde step above right here, and you can see it transitions from this nice trim piece that's real finished looking kind of down here to this rougher wood that's been, you know, stained and darkened, so it kind of blends in, but it certainly doesn't look as nice as this trim piece, and it doesn't cover as much of the door jamb here, the transition. So I'm going to come back and get a piece of trim like this and stain it to match the wood as best I can, and then go all the way down here, kind of go around this stair bracket, and that way it'll look more finished. So that's another little detail that I'm going to do on both sides as well as over here, and I think that'll finish it up real nicely. And if you're like me, you're probably dying to see the stairs in action, but before I show you that, let me just give you a view of all the different tools that I use for this install. I've got a 3/8 inch wrench, a 9/16, a 7/16, and then of course the Allen keys that they provided, some painter's tape for the marking and a Sharpie, then the silicone, my oscillating tool, of course the 7/32 drill bit for the holes, and just a regular drill. So if you want to pause the video, those are the tools, the basic tools that you're going to need to complete this install. Okay, so that concludes the install video for these steps. Now I'm going to try using them for a while, and then I'm going to come back with a follow-up video, a full review with my likes and dislikes. So definitely make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. But to close out the video, I'm going to go up and down the steps a couple times and push them in and out and deploy them, so you kind of get an idea, at least a preview of what that's like. But I got to say, so far I'm very impressed. Feels like a very high-end product, a very well designed, well-made product. But let me show you now how they fold up. So just like drawbridge steps, you got to have your door all the way open, and you're just going to reach down here at the bottom and pick it up. You can kind of see it's like an accordion, like scissors going in and out here. And then if you have the bottom booster step deployed like I do in my case, you just slide that lever and then push it in and fold it up there, and then it rests on those studs. My door closes just like normal. And now let me deploy them, but I'm going to pretend like I don't have as much clearance here. And so before I had them pulled all the way out, there was probably about 3 or 4 inches against the barn wall here. Well, let's pretend like I just don't have that clearance. So you can see, if you have these feet pushed in, you really only need, I'll get you that exact measurement in the review, but that looks like about maybe 18 inches or less of clearance that you would need. So let's just pretend like I don't have much clearance this time, and I'm just going to deploy them just like that. Now you can certainly put the booster step down and straighten out the pitch of the steps, but if I just need to get in real quick, this is probably what I would do. And guys, this feels very stable, very easy and quick if you need quick access, and it's enough to get your feet on the treads and get in and out of your RV. So let me show you again what that looks like closing it up. Again, look at that kind of scissor action. Just feels very smooth, very heavy duty, and well made. Well, there you have it, folks. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to catch that review with my likes and dislikes coming up soon.